This is the Hello World podcast, where we talk about habits of success, habits of excellence, entrepreneurship, leadership, learning and development, and outlook that will help us succeed through life. This is Louis Banta, CEO and Chief Trainer of Learning Just Made Better, or LJMB. This episode 6, is about the O in Hello, outlook. And our guest for today will talk about the PUSO Philosophy. Our guest is a multi-awarded basketball coach, the only 5-time PBA Coach of the Year awardee. He became more famous as head coach of Team Gilas Pilipinas, the Philippine national basketball team, which he led to a historic silver medal finish at the 2013 FIBA Asia Championship and the subsequent appearance at the 2014 FIBA World Cup, the country's first in 36 years. He has been a CEO for the past 30 years, CEO, coach, executive, and owner. He's a certified Marshall Goldsmith executive and team coach and a certified ICP ACC Agile Management and Scrum coach. He is the former CEO of TV5 Network Incorporated. Currently owner of Toni Guy Philippines and Coachcom Incorporated or Inc., where he sits as chairman and CEO, named Spin.ph Sportsman of the Year Award, one of People Asia's 2013 People of the Year, the one who made PUSO the national battle cry when he coached Team Gilas Pilipinas. Dear listeners of Hello World, our guest for episode 6, Coach Chot Reyes.
Hi Louis, and hello to everyone there. Hello world, thanks for having me.
So thank you, Coach, for saying yes to this one. And the topic today is PUSO Philosophy to the Filipino nation, to the country in general. Pag na-mention yung word na PUSO, I'm sure that your name will always come out as related to PUSO because you, again, popularized that. It became the country's basketball mantra. Although I understand with my search in the internet that this PUSO philosophy is also a leadership framework that you have expanded and developed, where literally may puso talaga dun sa center, no?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you'd like to walk us through, in a nutshell, ano ba itong PUSO philosophy?
Yeah, over the years, because of my involvement with a lot of organizations, working with a lot of leaders, I thought that it was time to put together, and a lot of people were asking what are my thoughts on leadership. So I put together what I thought are the most important elements of leadership, especially now as we are facing in COVID. So I, if you will allow me to share my screen, I put together a very simple model para magkaroon ng global appeal. In English ko yung puso, obviously, which is heart. So I put together the heart of a leader model, and just very briefly, I'll go through it. Very simple lang naman. You can see the framework. It's enclosed in a diamond because ito talaga, this was built on difficulty, on failure, on rejection. You know, I mean, people know me now with my 5 Coach of the Year awards and titles, but very few people remember that I've been fired unceremoniously 2 or 3 times as well from my job. So it was not all roses. And the same thing with my entrepreneurial endeavors. I have Toni Guy is doing well, and Coachcom is doing well, but I have had other businesses before that didn't do so well, and we had to shut down. And so this is all an accumulation of all the lessons that I've learned and experiences over the years. That's why it's, sabi nila, di ba, diamond, the more you subject it to fire, lalo siyang lumalakas at tumitibay. But the heart of the model is right there. The heart, yung puso talaga, which is health. The heart stands for health, emotional intelligence, agility, resilience, and teammanship. So it's very simple. The foundation for all great leadership for me is really physical health. I mean, every leader has to take care of his or her own health. Madalas kasi naiisip lang natin yung health when meron na tayong nararamdaman when we're in poor health. And so for me, that is the foundation. And we all know science has proven that great physical fitness leads to sharper mental acuity and higher emotional intelligence. And we know today that emotional intelligence, EQ, is even more valuable than IQ a lot of times, especially in this day and age. I mean, imagine this pandemic that we're in, this chaos that we're in. I mean, the more chaotic things are, the more important it is for us to be calm and centered and peaceful inside. And the way there is mindfulness. That's why there's mindfulness here. And that's the way to emotional intelligence. I have Goldman chart, emotional intelligence tools, all of these things that you see there. These are the different models. There are more than 20 models and tools that we share in the workshop that when we teach the heart of a leader. So the foundation is health. It's what enables emotional intelligence, and it's fueled and it's powered by agility, an agile mindset to be able to navigate through the disruptions that we are facing today. More than ever, agility is critical to our success as leaders and as organizations. Now, agility demands speed, quickness, sometimes, sabi nga nila, done more than perfect. That means we're going to make mistakes. That means we're not going to get it right all the time. And so resilience is critical, is as important as ever. The ability to recover, I call it the bounce back ability. And we teach 8 practices, grit. We teach the growth mindset is very important for agility and resilience as well. And all of these things, health, emotional intelligence, agility, and resilience, are scaled by our ability to build teams. Because my belief is that the individual heroic model of leadership no longer works. What we need now are leaders who can build teams of leaders. So that's it. That is, in a nutshell, that is the model. We teach this in an 8-hour workshop over 3 days. 2.5, 3 hours a day, spread over once a week. Different formats depending on the companies or the clients that we work with. And I find that it is very relevant because everything that we spoke about there, health today is so important. Yes. Emotional intelligence, more so agility and resilience. And so, yeah.
And our listeners are really privileged to have seen that model. And I'll let you promote later, Coach, kung paano kanila how they can reach out to you for some possible speaking workshops. But what I like about that is it's holistic leadership. No, while it sounds PUSO emotional, there's spiritual, there's also mental, and then you also have that element of relationship. No, yes. And you ended nga with relationship. Holistic na siya. And at the same time, if I will look at all of those elements there, you have Goldman, you have grit, you have successfully put together different frameworks, all in that model. So I can imagine the wealth of input that people will go through.
Yeah, and my focus is the how-to. It's not really the know-how of it. It's really the how-to. So it's very practical. I want us to, so that when you attend first session pa lang, you already have tools that you can use right away. The next day, magagamit mo na kagad with your people, with your team, because, I'm just putting myself in the shoes of the participants. Diba? Tayo, when we sit in, when we attend workshops, we want to get practical tools, diba, that we can use right away. So what happened was when I retired from TV5 last year, 1 year na, this month, I took a look at what my clients were looking for, and the number one thing that they were looking for was agile. So I became a certified agile management and even a Scrum coach. And then when the pandemic hit, it was all about then the more agile became important, but then the elements of resilience and emotional intelligence and grit. So I completed courses on mastering resilience, building resilience, the science of well-being, because what I learned from leaders, and I'm sure you have the same experience, Louis, the leaders that we work with, they all know the value of these things. Alam naman nila yun, di ba? Importante emotional intelligence, agility, they all know that. But the question is, can you coach it? So that's my role. I come in and I give them real tools and tips that they can use to coach it, so that pwede nilang ituro at ibahagi sa mga teams nila. So that's where I'm coming from.
And of course, when the word coach is mentioned in any discussion in any group in the Philippines now, no? Alam mo, nung coach, nung bata-bata pa tayo, no, pag coach, mga baby dalupan yan, tama? O kaya mga Jaworski. Pero ngayon walang walang paltos to. Whenever I check with groups, no, really, when you hear the word coach, Coach Chot Reyes, your name really come in the list. One of the most successful basketball coaches of all time. I read a lot in the introduction earlier. You were the only 5-time PBA coach, tapos 8 times champion, and then the historic Gilas achievement. How much of your success in your sports career was because of the PUSO philosophy? I'm sure baka wala pa ito nung una, no? Pero it's there in you, in your head, in your being. How much of Chot Reyes' success over the years is because of the elements of PUSO?
To be very frank, the PUSO battlecry was developed not only by me, but really by the entire team Gilas. Because my background as a team builder and a team facilitator, so sa amin sa Gilas and all the teams that I coach, whether that was Talk and Text or Coke, we do a lot of team building activities. So aside from basketball, every time we go out on trips and nagti-team building kami palagi. We do everything that you do. Yung sa online and what we used to do live, we do a lot of those things. And of course, kasama na doon is we crafted our values. So yun ang nangyari. So for us, that's where we first built the team model, which I still teach up to today with companies. So our team model, sabi ko, we had that workshop where we asked the players, what are the most important things for us as a team? What are the values that we stand for? So the players came out, not only me, the players came up with it, and we came up with team, trust, effort, accountability, motivation. So yun yung team model namin. Sabi ko, ito And then when we got back and we became successful, I started talking about team to organizations and to companies. And they really liked it because it resonated, because everybody knows, di ba? Even the Google study, Project Aristotle, the number one most important element to successful teams is psychological safety, which is group trust. Yes. So job number one, really, if you want to build teams, is to build trust with your people. So it worked with Gilas. So yun yung naging that those are the values that we came up with. But what powers all of that is first of all, yung puso. Yung puso talaga, sa amin kasi, sa Gilas, our battle cry is very simple. We fight till we cannot fight anymore for our country with all our hearts. Yun yung laban Pilipinas, puso. Doon lang galing yun eh. So that's why naging So sa every huddle, every game, narinig ng mga tao, sisigaw kami, laban Pilipinas. Sisigaw ako, laban Pilipinas. Sasagot yung mga players, puso. So that's where it came from. It now became the national battle cry. Lahat ng sports, lahat ng lahat narinig mo, ginagamit na talaga nila yung puso. And in the end, we said, hindi namin kaya labanan yung kalaban namin sa basketball sa Asia sa height. Kasi, alam naman tayong mga Pinoy, tayong pinaka-cute sa Asia, di ba? We're the short, we don't have their height. And we didn't have the experience because although magaling tayo, matagal na yung PBA, magaling tayo in the Philippines, but we had very little experience competing outside. So sabi ko, ihanapin natin yung that one thing which is purely Pinoy. Talaga yung ayaw talagang magpatalo, ayaw bumigay. So yung puso, yung ayaw magpatalo, and then the puso para serbisyo, the pagmamahal sa bayan, the love of country, the service for country. So yun yung talagang purpose namin. And so that is what animates the team model, our love for country. So yung team, yung paano, yung how to. So now we have a step-by-step model. When I come into organizations, I teach leaders how to build their teams, step-by-step model. Kasi we've never, there is no class in any college or in any MBA course that's called Teamwork 101 or Team Building, Fundamentals of Team Building. Wala, di ba? And yet every organization, they expect their leaders to know how to build teams. So that's our value. So that's I think that's the biggest value I bring to my work now with organizations. Just an understanding of how to build teams and the heart of the leader model. But even in the heart of the leader, the last letter there, letter T, is team, which that's where my team model comes in. So yun talaga yun. It's really sustained me through my life, through my early hardships, starting out, and then the difficulties, not only in basketball coaching and in sports, but also here in running organizations. I've had, a lot. I've had a lot of stumbles and rejections and difficulties all through my life, but I'm here. You're talking to me, so that means I've always been able to pick myself up and survive. So so that's really just the strength ng character, the strength ng puso. Yung ayaw lang bumili.
And what I'd like our listeners now to pay attention to is most of us just know the battle cry of puso. Pero you put it in context, parang laban Pilipinas puso. Service, you mentioned service to the country. We will fight for the honor of the country with all our hearts. So ngayon ko lang narinig yun, Coach, yung buo na yun. And what I like is, I was asking about you, but you brought it back to team. Diba? If our listeners would notice, sabi ni Coach, hindi lang akin yan ay product ng joint journey, collective journey of the team. Yes. And for those of you who just see basketball teams play there, we don't see the behind the scenes. We don't see the struggles in building the team. Nag-define sila ng values. No? Similar to what business leaders really do in a corporate setting.
Exactly, yeah.
Players also need to do that. Coach, I will deviate from our questions. Really interested that yung sports background mo, has it really enabled you to become a better coach even outside of sports? Now that you coach and mentor business professionals and executives, how important is that sports grounding to you now coaching others?
A lot. And it turns out it's not a phenomenon that is particular only to me. I discovered that what was that Fortune 500 there was a Forbes, a Harvard Business Review article and Forbes research that 90% of Fortune 500 CEOs were elite athletes in college. And then they interviewed 800 female executives, top executives or female. It was 95% for elite athletes in college. So there is really that connection between sports and athletics and business or executive prowess, because when you are an athlete or a sportsman all your life, you already, number one, you already know the value of hard work and discipline. Hindi mo na kailangan. And teamwork, di ba? Alam na, it's really correct. Instilled already in us. So it was the same thing with me as a coach. I approach situations always with a coaching mindset, whether it's my work in leading Toni and Guy, our other business, or when I was the CEO of TV5, it was always with that approach, and napakalaking bagay nung coaching background ko, because sa coaching we are subject to extreme pressure where we have to make decisions very, very fast. We don't split second. We don't even have a few minutes to wait and decide. Things happen so quickly. And then our decisions, kita kagad sa scoreboard. It's very, it's very...
Because under public scrutiny ka pa,
yes, no? Yes. And then, in as much as I got a lot of acclaim when we won, you can imagine the kind of hatred and bashing that I got when we lost. I mean, the vitriol I received were something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It was so bad that, even my kids, my wife got affected because ganun sa Pilipinas sa basketball, lalo sa basketball, alam mo sa atin, relihiyon ng basketball. I mean, sa basketball, pag panalo yung team, ang galing ng players. Pag talo yung team, ang tanga ng coach. It's always the coach's fault. So you can imagine the kind of, hatred and bashing that I got. But like I said, I withstood it. So the kind of pressure, the lessons that I learned there in basketball coaching, I was able to bring over to my work with companies and in running my business. In the end, it was and the mistakes that I made also in coaching, I was able to kind of help me in running my business and when I was running TV5. And the most important learning really can be distilled to the fact that in the end, you win with your people. It doesn't matter how technically gifted you are, how much technical skills you have, or how high your IQ is, or how talented you are. If your people stop playing for you, you can throw it all out the window. It doesn't mean nothing. So that's a coach's job, really, to put a group of individuals together to work not towards one direction, not towards one goal, but to work with one heartbeat. Yun talaga ang team. If you can get a group of individuals working with one heartbeat. Sa basketball kasi ganun yung hindi na kailangan mag-usap, nagkatinginan lang, tawag nga natin sa Tagalog, nagkaamuyan lang Nagkaamuyan lang, alam na di ba? You know already just by sensing, that's what you mean when you say working with one heartbeat. Sa basketball, we call it chemistry. Sa sports, we call it chemistry. Sa organizations, we call it culture. Different zones. So in organization, we call it culture. So how can you build that culture?
And you have 12 people who have different heartbeats at the start, no? And then through your interventions or activities or journeying together to success and failure, it becomes one heartbeat. Coach, you mentioned an important aspect earlier. When the team wins, it's the players. When the team loses, it's the coach. Do you agree with that?
That is the heart of accountability. In the end, as leaders, we have to take accountability for that. And when the team wins, we have to give the credit to our people, di ba? I believe in it, and I don't, if that's even possible. I think it's also very unfair to leaders. It's very unfair to coaches because a lot of things in sports or even in business are largely out of our hands, di ba? But in the end, I think human nature is always wants to be able to point at somebody for the success or the failure. So the loneliness of leadership is that the buck stops here. The buck stops with you. So that's one of the most important things you have to ask yourself if you are going to take a significant leadership position. Are you ready for this? Because that's the risk. It's a great profession. The rewards are fantastic, but you also have to understand what the risks are, and those are one of the risks of significant or high profile leadership position.
In this episode being on O Outlook, another outlook that Coach Chot mentioned is the outlook of accountability, di ba? Giving credit to people when it's due and really accepting that the buck stops with me. Coach, just interested on this PUSO framework or heart framework that you have. Chot Reyes is strongest on which one? Emotional, mental, spiritual, relational, or deep health? Kung magsa-self-assessment ka ng, you may be high on all five, what's your top strength? And where do you think you also need to do reinforcement?
I think my strength, I think I'm better than most in building teams, really understanding and putting together teams and inspiring people to sacrifice and subjugate their personal interests for the good of the team. I have a very deep understanding and experience about what makes teams click, and I have a I think one of my gifts is an ability to connect with people. So when I talk about connection, vulnerability, trust, psychological safety, it's very natural for me because that's a strength that I have. That's a strength. My biggest weakness is emotional intelligence because I really had I'm so much better at it now. But really, I've always been one to lose my temper. I was very when I was in the PBA, they called me the finest coach in the PBA. Akong pinakamataas binabayad na fine sa commissioner's office. Lagi akong technical foul kasi palagi ko sinisigawan yung referee. So that's something that I consciously work on, and that's why I made it a part of. I thought it was a very important part of our leadership model because especially now when you talk about outlook, the most important outlook to have is a positive outlook. Because if your outlook is negative, wala na, tama na talaga. You're not even giving yourself a chance.
Yes.
So I think that's the most important.
But Coach, referring to those days when you were really, I would see it as passion. Di ba talagang mataas ang level of competitiveness mo, no? Tapos nandun yung passion, the heat of the moment, you would really behave like that.
Yeah, but then when it was uncontrollable and I couldn't manage my emotions, it affected even my players. And that's why I got fired twice. And I was doing very well in Pure Foods. I was doing well in Santa Lucia. I mean, kung kulelat kami, of course, coaches are hired to be fired, di ba? But I was delivering on every important metric for a coach, and still 2 teams fired me because hindi matiis ng players yung coach. So that was my biggest learning there, na yung value talaga that, the understanding that you win with your players, and that sometimes just being able to deliver the performance and the metrics, that's not enough because there comes a time where hindi ka talaga kaya or matiis or masikmura ng mga tao. And then you have to go, and that's one of the very, very important learnings that I think that has made me the leader that I am today. The importance of that.
And with what you just described, comes to mind a lot of stories that I heard in organizations I've also worked with. No? Parang typical yung emotions being one of the biggest barriers of a leader in really putting teams together. Is that the same experience that you have, Coach, working with a lot of your clients and your audiences?
Because if you're not able to, emotional intelligence starts with self-awareness, right? So if you're aware and you know yourself, then you can manage your emotions better. But if you cannot manage your emotions, how can you manage the emotions of your people? How can you even be empathetic to them? Diba? How can you have an ability to inspire and influence them? So that's why for me that's very, very important. And we see that all the time. We see a lot of really great, accomplished technical leaders, but they really have a hard time. They basically are leading, or people follow them only because of their position. And we know today, especially with the millennials and the Gen Z, they don't care about your position, your credentials, your title. Wala na sa kanila yan. That doesn't impress them. Unlike tayo dati, uy, si boss, maski we will respect that. Today, that's no longer a big factor, diba? You really have to be able to connect with them, and that's the way to inspire them and get them to do their best work. So we see that all the time, and that's why Medium.com says emotional intelligence, self-regulation is becoming the number one skill that's required in the 21st century. So that's why inaral ko talaga yan. I took courses on it. I took a certification on emotional intelligence. And I'm now moving towards, in fact, today, they're saying emotional intelligence is not enough. We now need to have emotional brilliance because sobrang gulo. It's so, the pace of change is so quick, it's so chaotic, it's so disruptive that it's really a different ball game now that we're going into this VUCA world is really very, very different.
May bago na nga raw, Coach, na narinig ko yung, hindi na raw VUCA, rap na raw, rap, no? Yung merong, Rain, what is rap nga? If you can just fill me in here. Hindi na raw rapid, di ba? I was introduced to that, no? And looking at the PUSO philosophy, Coach, ang ganda talaga niya because you said you're relational, but the only way by which you can really put a team together is if you start with the basics, no, and work with your own emotions as well. Or what's tough with this PUSO philosophy for people who want to, work with you and be mentored by you on this one? What's first warning or first reminder or piece of advice? It's not all. I'm sure it's not all easy.
Yeah. No, my experience with actual experience working with organizations is health, because executives, they don't really pay attention. They don't pay too much attention to their health, really their ability. That's why we have a program, the Corporate Athlete, where we work on managing your energy and making sure that you train or you approach your work like an athlete. Kasi ang athletes, pag nag-train kami, we have periods of high optimization, and then we have periods of recovery. So that there's an oscillation. That's how we get to top performance. How we prepare to be at our peak pag competition. Sa trabaho kasi, athletes, they work, they practice, or they prepare, they train 70% of the time, 80, and they compete maybe 20% of the time. Executives baliktad, di ba? Executives are competing 80, 90% of the time and only train 10, 15% of the time. So they forget that they're masyadong linear, and that's what leads to the burnout. If you're constantly linear, yung anxiety and stress sa'yo, that leads to a lot of problems later on. So you have to understand that you have to recover, that you have to rest, you have to build all of these things into your regular routine. So we find that that's really the most important thing, is to let executives understand. I think that's going to be one of the offshoots of this pandemic. People are now realizing really the value of health, diba? So I think that's very, very important. And the better in shape you are, the higher your fitness level, the sharper your mental acuity you will be, the better you're going to have. Diba? Minsan you feel like you're so irritable, di ka maka-focus, di ka maka-concentrate. Chances are, anong oras ka natulog, ilang araw ka na, anong kinain mo, nakapag-workout ka ba? Have you been? So there's always a physical cost. There's almost always a physical cost to all of your work problems. So that's the tough part, to make people realize that they have to know their numbers. They know their numbers of their business. Alam nila lahat yan, all of the ratios and factors, the sales levels and figures. We all know that about our business. But do we all know our health numbers? That's very important. And the second part of that is that health also is about organizational health. Kasi wala naman tayong nakatrabahong bobong organization, di ba, Louie? Every organization we work with are very smart, intelligent executives. Yes. But then, smart doesn't equate to healthy. Di ba? So it's not about the intelligence of organizations, but it's their organizational health. So that's the more difficult part that nakikita ko. And it's so fundamental to things. So pag inayos mo yung piece na yan, everything is easier. A lot of those things are getting better. But other than that, that's the issue we're facing.
What I like about the framework is that this one is here, it's at the center. A lot of other leadership frameworks take it for granted. But here, you place it at the center, the beating heart talaga.
Well,
and then you reference back.
Tama yung sabi mo, we have a tendency to take our health for granted. Tama ka nun, yeah.
Kaya nag-glorify pa nga yung mga yung mga business leaders who are really workaholic. I'm actually included in that, no?
Yeah. Tayo, our di ba?
Yung hustle, di ba? Sinasabi natin yung hustling at work, but this is a very good reminder to everyone. Coach, if health is one of the major areas for improvement of the typical executive out there, what's a second AFI? What's a second weakness? Is it
Um,
EQ, agility, resilience, teammanship?
I think today more and more it's agility. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
the number one reason why successful leaders fail is because they were not able to adapt to the pace of change. Just because the pace of
Mm-hmm.
change is so and that's the problem. Successful leaders, because you're successful, ang galing mo, you've already
Mm-hmm.
achieved a level of success. So you'll say, why do I need to change? Tagal ko nang ginagawa ito, ang galing ko na dito, di ba? So yun ang next part. And uh, I think the companies that are thriving today, they're the ones who were like you, like your company, di ba? You were able to adjust very quickly, and now you're reaping the benefits, and the others who did not. The others have not been able to adjust as quickly, and that's the key. That's what I mean by agility, the ability to adjust quickly. Not I mean, if you give everyone years, lahat naman makaka-adjust, di ba? But who has that now? You don't even have 3 months or 6 months today in this day and age, di ba? So how are you? How have you built your company to be agile? So those are now. That's where a lot of the difficulties that I'm seeing in organizations today. Have they built, because a lot of organizations still are from the old, the traditional pyramid structure and all that, ang bagal ng decision making, it's so command and control pa rin. So that's really, and that really takes that's a hard change. I teach a module on easy change versus hard change. Yung easy change, kumbaga sa app yan, i-update mo lang yung app eh. Yung hard change, change talaga ng OS yun, of the operational system. So a lot of times, agility is a hard change. It really, you have to examine your ways of working, the way you do things, and even your thinking. Agility starts from mental agility. It is the leaders, the ability of the leader to be mentally agile, to think quick, to be adaptable, and all that. So if you're not agile as a leader, you can never. How can you develop and build an agile organization, right? So.
And it's really a trainable quality.
Yes,
agility.
It is a skill. Even mental agility, they have come now with the concept of neuro agility. They have seen the science now behind the neuro agility, our brain's ability to be agile. So it is trainable. It is a skill. Pwede talaga.
And of course, I have a bias for sports. I did not necessarily excel in sports, but I love playing sports.
Yeah, but you were a sportsman all your life, yeah.
And I played different sports, and that's why I really see your value. You are a winning, not just athlete, you're a winning coach. And then you've transitioned to helping leaders also use the same principles. Coach, maganda bang training ang sports? Kasi nag-cite ka din ng mga statistics kanina, no? Athletes, no? Maganda bang training? Pwede sigurong i-infuse yung training ng isang atleta or ng isang coach pag ikaw ay leader and you want to succeed in business.
Very much so. And yun nga yung that's the gist of our corporate athlete or our business athlete program. Yun talaga. How to train, how to have the Mamba mentality, di ba? Or how to train like an Tiger Woods or Roger Federer, di ba? So they are very skilled, they're athletic, they have some prowess, but what people don't realize is the hours and hours of effort and training and resources that they pour behind being able, kasi iba yung a lot of athletes train but the special athlete, the real good ones, they can perform at their peak at the most crucial time, pag clutch time. That's where they're able to perform. Yun
may clutch player, coach, di ba? May clutch player talaga.
Yes. Kasi nakikita ko yun, we have so many players ang galing sa practice. Ang galing sa practice, di siya mag-miss, walang mali sa practice. Pero pag game time, nagdi-disappear. Ganon din sa organizations. You can imagine, di ba? At in crisis. That's why they're calling it now this pandemic, we call it the CEO moment. Dito talaga nasusukat. Sino talaga ang, who are the CEOs, the leaders who can really step up and make their mark and make their value. So,
I mentioned that because sa sports talagang you don't resist with the new game plan eh. Tanggap mo kaagad kasi babasahin mo lang yung play ng kalaban tapos change. But why is it that in business or in teams, konting change ng process, konting tweak ng ganito, and people, even leaders, no? Leaders will say, ano ba yan, bago ng bago, not really embracing agility. Have you encountered a lot of that,
a
Coach?
lot, yes. Diba? And they will say, no, we want innovation, we want change, pero konting ano lang, ayaw nila. So, parang, paano yun, di ba? So, yes, that's why it's very important that we teach the growth mindset and we make people realize that if you're a fixed mindset, you cannot be agile. You have to have that growth mindset talaga. And that in fact, and ang importante sa growth mindset is understanding that difficulty is part of the process. Kasi fixed mindset individuals, pag nahirapan ng konti, ayaw na. And essentially, ganun yun, di ba? Yan na naman, kakagawa lang natin to, bago na naman. Bago na naman. But, ganun yung punto eh.
Sa sports, pag bago ang play, you don't have time to complain kasi if it's the last 3 seconds, yun na yun.
Especially when we play in international competition. The way we train and prepare for Croatia is very different from the way we prepare for Argentina. It's completely different. The way we play Korea, ibang-iba sa the way we play Iran. Completely different. Wala mang very few similarities. So you can imagine the level of agility that's required. That's why in my talks, I have a 10-second video of an actual game where talo na talaga kami but we found a way to win. So I call it 10 leadership lessons in 10 seconds. So yun, we really showed the value of agility and resilience. Yung alam mo talo ka na pero nanalo ka pa. So
and
in my team talks naman, we watch the last 3 minutes of the Korea game. So, and we get the lessons from that.
And I did my research too, Coach. Sabi nga nung coach ng Argentina daw, since you mentioned Argentina, no? That the one thing na nahirapan sila sa Gilas is that they cannot read you. Tama? Hindi daw nila ma-predict kung ano ang gagawin nyo. I think it's because of that. You prepare differently for different competitors, no?
Because normally, gano'n, papanoorin mo yung previous game, di ba? Before we played Argentina, we played Croatia. So, akala nila, when they scouted us, ito yung game plan gagawin ng Pilipinas. Pagdating sa kanila, ibang-iba yung ginawa namin. So, that's talaga. That's a great example of agility that, that's why I think my role there was just to have a very agile, open mindset and then to convince and to inspire the players to have it as well. But in the end, it's the players who do it for them to be able to execute it. Ang hirap nun. Di ba? Dali naman magplano, magganyan. But the execution, that's where you separate really the men from the boys.
The powerful parallelism between sports talaga. Actually, in any area of life, no, sports in life, sports in business, no, sports in learning and development. There's a lot that anybody can really learn from just engaging in sports. So it builds character, and now all of this. Really fascinated and looking at the framework now sa YouTube video.
The one thing that sports builds that you cannot get anywhere else is resilience. Because sports teaches you how to accept defeat, how to bounce back from a loss. Hindi mo matuturo yun eh. Saan mo matuturo sa eskwela yun, di ba? Or sa mga anak mo, how can you teach that, di ba? So unless they experience what it means to come back from bone-crushing, nakakaiyak na talo, yung ginawa mo lahat, you tried your hardest, you put in your best 100% effort, natalo ka pa. Worst is sometimes may game na you did everything right and then nagkaroon lang ng masamang tawag ng referee or there was just a bad bounce, a bad break, and then natalo ka because of that. Ang hirap makapit. But sport, you have no choice. You have to accept it and you move on. And that's the greatest way to build and understand what resilience is all about, your ability to bounce back. to always recover.
And since we're talking about resiliency, you already mentioned earlier your failures as well. And perhaps the worst is getting fired from coaching jobs.
Yeah.
What lessons do you have in mind during those times? And now looking back during those situations, what lessons could you pass on to others regarding tough failures?
Well,
in
like
career,
I said,
especially in career, no?
yeah, like I said, when Pure Foods essentially they did not renew my contract after
Okay.
when it expired. Even if I took the team to the finals, we went to 4 or 5 finals in my 4 years there. We won 2 championships. I won 2 Coach of the Year awards. It was a great performance. Kung gagawin mo ng performance evaluation, glowing eh. But they decided, so I thought it was a foregone conclusion they will renew me. To my surprise, they said, sorry, we decided not to renew your contract. But I said, okay lang, maraming kukuha sa akin because I was finest coaching ako nun, di ba? Sabi ko, okay lang, I'm going to prove them wrong, may kukuha naman sa akin. And sure enough, before, wala pang 1 month, another team signed me. And in our first tournament, we took them to their best ever record, their first finish, their first trophy in history. And then the next month, they fired me. As in, yun talaga. Literally, tinawag ko ng manager's office and said, you're fired. So
after getting that trophy?
Yeah. After getting the trophy, it was, ano ba ngayon? August. Ito, ganitong buwan. We got their first trophy in company history in July, and then the next month they fired me. And so that gave me really those hard to accept lessons. That number one, you win with people. You win with people. It doesn't matter what your credentials or your performance is. If your people stop playing for you, it really doesn't matter. Number two, the value of change, because Pure Foods was already sending me that signal when they did not renew my contract. But I said, no, my stuff works. Magaling ako. My offense, X's and O's, my technical ability, my skills, my analytical skills are fantastic. And I said I was going to prove Pure Foods wrong. I was the one who was proven wrong. So the second part is the value of agility. How the need to change when your inability to change will really get you into trouble. So that is the second part. But then the third part also was the resilience, because you'll never really experience resilience unless you've been through that those gut-wrenching moments in your life where, I mean, that was really the lowest point of my career. Diba? Na, literally, kasi when you're a coach, ang maganda yung sweldo mo one day, the next day, wala na. And it's not like in companies where you have severance packages, you have all these things. Sa basketball coaching, we're contractual, di ba? So, pero that's it. And then the fourth thing is the value of having a support system around you, because really, that's where I realized the value of having, my family around me, everyone running around me and all that. So and that's how I came up with my 5 Gs of resilience, because throughout my experiences.
Okay. So, Coach, kasama din yung 5 Gs dito, no? When they, let's say, avail of this complete workshop, they will have to go through that. No?
Yeah, we a lot. In fact, on 5 Gs, I just shared it when I give my 30 or 40-minute virtual talks. I already talk about the how, like I say, it's how to say, diba? I don't talk about the values, but I say, okay, how do we recover? How to hindi na bounce back, diba? How to bounce forward, sabi ni Sheryl Sandberg, is an option.
Correct. And what I like about you said is those failures or those times in your career when you were really disrupted, no, came even after achievements or results, no. Hindi na talaga guarantee that if you're performing, nothing bad will happen. That's where agility really comes in. Yeah. What's tough in coaching business people, executives?
Very early, I established my company Coachcom 2002, so 18 years ago. Very early, coaching was taboo. Parang, but ako coach, there's nothing wrong with me. That was especially with Filipino executives. But now I think it's a lot more acceptable and all that. So
Mhm.
the only thing naman that I see now that they're asking is how sure are we that that's going to work sa amin. So
Mhm.
that's really the toughest part naman. But I think the fact that we are professionals and practitioners as well, kasi
Mhm.
di ba, I'm not only a trained and certified executive coach, I'm a coach, I'm an executive and a business owner. So
Mhm.
so I think that combination is helping me. But the tough part is to really see that first question sa owners, sa leaders is that how is that going to help my business? And the second, and I think this is the toughest part, is really self-awareness. It's for
Okay.
leaders to realize what their times it's just a blind spot. Maybe wala lang nakapagsabi. That's our job as coaches, to tell the boss the things that nobody else will tell him kasi natatakot
Mhm.
sila, di ba? So
Mhm.
I say, you cannot fire me naman. So I'll just tell you what I think, di ba? So I'll just be very straightforward with the feedback. So
Mhm.
that's the toughest thing sometimes, is to make leaders realize
Mhm.
that sometimes the problem is them.
Mhm.
A lot of
If
times
the
the problem is
if
them.
the coachee does not listen even to you, what's your next step?
There's always, I always believe that everyone is coachable. The
Mhm.
only question naman is, do we have the time? Do we have
Mhm.
the time, di
Okay.
ba? So I'll try my best. I'll give it everything I have. But we always have that clause in our coaching agreement that we can always, either party can back out, can say,
Mhm.
this is not working. Uh, I'm not getting through to you. You're not listening to me. We're not achieving our objectives. So let's just shake hands and remain friends, and let's part
Okay.
ways and be professional about it. But
Okay.
but other than that, I think by and large, uh, you know, uh, the real good great leaders, the reason why they are great leaders is because they have that ability to listen, and maybe there's initial resistance, but to get beyond that, I think that's important, that initial
Mhm.
resistance. But if you ask me what's the most important, the toughest part, that's the toughest.
Mhm. Okay. And this again provides us with another important outlook to trust that people are coachable. Okay? To
Yes.
assume that everybody is receptive to coaching. And when that doesn't happen, yun na nga, no, you have your way out as well, no?
Yeah.
And you
Sometimes,
part ways.
maybe as leaders, sometimes we think we're coaching, but we're actually
Mhm.
telling and directing. Ayaw na
Mhm.
ayaw talaga ng
Correct.
new generation ngayon yan. I mean, if you
Mhm.
have teenage kids, you already know that, di ba? They hate
Mhm.
being told what to do. They're very talented, they're
Mhm.
very dynamic and skilled, but they just hate being told what to do. So if that's your
Mhm.
style of leadership, then that's where the problem
Mhm.
is.
Coach, last question, and this would be your top advice to three groups of people in terms of outlook. What's your top advice, the right outlook? Your first recipient of advice would be sports coaches and players, regardless of sport. What's the
Yeah.
right outlook that they should have?
Uh, what's the second group? Business leaders, di ba?
Business professionals, yes. So,
Business professionals. And the third is
is in general people who are struggling with
struggling. Yeah.
anything during this pandemic.
I'll share my 5 Gs because I think it cuts
Okay,
across. So
sure.
I think the first thing is to ground yourself in reality. Whether you're a coach, you're a business professional, you're struggling with this pandemic.
Mhm.
I think the most important thing is, number one, ground yourself in reality. I mean, be brutally honest about your situation now. What are your strengths? If you're a business owner, take a good hard look at your business. Does it really have a chance, or does it really have no chance?
Mhm.
Part, kasi for me as an entrepreneur, part of the skill of knowing how to get into businesses is knowing also when to get out. So
Mhm.
I think that's the first thing. Ground yourself in reality. If you are an individual struggling in this pandemic, same thing. Ground yourself in reality. Take a
Mhm.
look, really. This may be the direction you want, but is there really chance there, or wala, or whatever? You
Mhm.
better do something else. So you
Mhm.
must have that. Just be brutally honest with yourself. Ground yourself in
Mhm.
reality. Next, practice gratitude, because I think after you have figured out, you've done the brutal assessment part, the next step, with whatever decision and whatever step you take, you have to have a positive outlook, because if it's useless to go into anything that you are very pessimistic about or negative about. So you have to go to whatever that situation is with a can-do attitude. So I think, and starting from gratitude is a very effective way to get, to gain optimism, to have a positive attitude. Just remember that in spite of how bad things are going, there are still a few things that we can be thankful for, that we can be grateful for. Let's see, what are our strengths? What can we build on? See, what are the skills that we have? What are the resources we have? I mean, if you think about those things, and you practice gratitude, you start from a place of optimism and with a positive outlook, with a can-do attitude, and that's going to propel you, give you that momentum to go towards that next step. And which is just check your grit, because whatever it is that you decide to do, you will really have to persevere and really put in back-breaking work. So grit is about Angela Duckworth said, grit is about the intersection of passion and perseverance. So that's now where you take a look at, what are you passionate about, or your purpose? What's your purpose? Ano ba talagang gusto mong gawin? Ano ba yung direction? And where it is that you do, you're going to, you can learn it, you can be good at it, you can develop. If there's a skill that you need to learn, there's a skill that you need to develop, it is possible. Because if you have a growth mindset, then you can achieve almost anything. So ground yourself in reality, practice gratitude, check your grit, nurture your growth mindset. And then finally, surround yourself with a good time tribe, or a good team, or great support system. That's the most important thing. So for everyone who is struggling with this pandemic, I think those are going to be helpful for you, even for business leaders, entrepreneurs. I think that's a good checklist to use, and even for basketball, for sports coaches. I say that to basketball coaches and those who want to go into executive and business coaching. Ground yourself in reality. Coaching is a great profession, but it's a terrible business. I mean, it's hard to really make make a great living out of just coaching alone. So you have to have other forms of income, others to be doing other stuff. But that's why, I mean, when I say ground yourself in reality, have a brutally honest assessment of your situation now in life, and don't be in denial. But then practice gratitude. Yeah.
And our listeners have been treated to the framework earlier, and now you added the specifics of the 5 Gs that anybody else can apply regardless of where they are. Iba-iba lang ng application. Coach, how can they get in touch with you for workshops or requests for coaching? Where should they go?
Just go to LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile, Coach Chot at LinkedIn, or send a message to me on. I'm all over social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Coachcom has a Facebook page. Coachcom has a LinkedIn page. We have a website as well. Just go to the Coachcom website. So it's very, very easy to get in touch with me. My email address, which is already 30 years old, is coachchot@yahoo.com. COACHOT@yahoo.com. So it's a very old. It's been with me for a long time. So, but I'm all over social media, so it's very easy to get in touch.
And to our listeners, don't worry, because at the end of this podcast, we will flash those contact details of Coach Vincent Chot Reyes.
Or get in touch with you if you get in touch with me.
Oh, yes. If you can send me a message, and then we're connected in Facebook. No? And we just heard the only 5-time PBA Coach of the Year, the man whom we really associate with PUSO, and now we better understand why PUSO. It's not just heart, but it's really Laban Pilipinas PUSO, fighting for the country with all our heart. May you be inspired wherever you are, our dear listeners, whether you are in business, in sports, or a typical individual who's trying to survive through this pandemic. Yes, yung puso na yon, yung PUSO philosophy, and then of course the 5Gs that Coach Chot has generously shared with us this afternoon. Bring that, live that, spread that to others. This is really an honor and privilege, Coach, to have you here. Dati pinapanood lang kita, no? Sa mga games, no, at saka tinitignan ko yung social media write-ups natin ng mga victories ng Gilas. Really, this is yes, I'm very thankful that we have you here in Hello World, so that our listeners can also take advantage of that PUSO philosophy. The right out, ang dami mong sinabi, accountability, give credit to the team, the buck stops with me, yes, the importance of emotional intelligence, no, agility during this time. Wow, please reach out to Coach Chot to learn more about that PUSO philosophy for your leaders in your organizations. Reach out to us and we will gracefully link you with Coach Chot Reyes. Coach Chot, maraming salamat. Always in service of our community.
This is Louis Banta of LJMB. Thank you for watching my video. To watch more videos like this, click subscribe and hit the bell icon below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and share it to others.